All right. Hey, what's going on there, folks? Good evening. It is the Earthmaster back here on this Thursday night, November 30th, 2023, 10:41 p.m. California time. Goodness, we got December right around the corner coming up here tomorrow, so that's pretty crazy. All right, the Auroras. What's going on with the Auroras right now? Where is our G3 class storm? Goodness. So right now, the 30-minute forecast here just calls for minimal conditions like we've seen pretty much all night tonight here across the polar regions. Again, we were expecting a G3 class storm kicking up, and it's still possible. Still looking at the time frame here, the detailed forecast from the SolarHam site shows it between 600 and 1200 there. That's going to be roughly, about 40 minutes ago to probably the next 5 hours or so. Now, it's possible it could stir up, but of course, just kind of watching this, seeing if it's going to intensify before it gets too late. I mean, I'm not going to stay up all night to watch this. This is a real-time solar wind data here. Now, we did see what looks like the CME hit us within the last couple hours or so, within the last few hours. We did see a spike in the density along with the speed increase. Obviously, proton uptick as well. That's in the density right here. Now, nothing like what we were expecting. Now, the possibilities here, I believe, are that maybe that was just the first arrival. In terms of, let me go back here to my data. Is it going to be this one? Potentially, this could be just the first arrival of one of the CMEs. Now, there was quite a few CMEs that were kicked off here in the last few days. A pretty big one from almost an X flare. It was a 9.8, M9.8, and that did produce a pretty significant blast of energy from the sun, Earth-directed. And it's very possible that maybe this was just the first arrival of one of, I would say, about 4 CMEs. The 3 that were trailing kind of combined into one. So it's possible we could see this thing kick up throughout the rest of the evening. Definitely disappointing if it doesn't. But it looks like potentially maybe this is what's going on here. Maybe this is just the arrival of the first one. We'll see how it goes throughout the remainder of the night. KP indexes did not get up that high, only observed around 4 or so not even a G1 class storm. And this is from the Alaska folks up there, one of the colleges up there, showing the extent of the potential auroras for tonight with KP index. They're stating up around the 7 or so. But I don't know. I mean, this is even these guys are stating with this time frame right here, UTC time, that we should have gotten it by now. We should have seen some type of arrival of the KP index being quite elevated. Not just this little wimpy little last few hours here. I mean, it's fairly quiet across the subaurora. Slightly active up into Canada and Alaska, but this, it just doesn't look all that impressive here on the Aurora forecast. So, again, we'll see how this plays out for the remainder of the night. It may kick in here right after bedtime. You just never know. But I am not going to stay up all night and watch and wait for this. Again, G3 class storming possibilities here for the rest of the night. Looking at 3500 is a pretty nice, beautiful sunspot. It does still harbor some potential for some flaring, although it's starting to scoot further and further here off the western regions of the sun, and we're left with what looks like some very quiet conditions once again. These sunspot regions that have come around the eastern limb are, they're decaying, and they look relatively stable here. It's going to be these regional sunspots here. So right now, main threat here, 3500, does harbor some potential for some flaring with a 99% chance for C flare, M flare at 35, X flare around 10% chance. Now we did see a little bit of flaring activity earlier throughout the day. peeking up into a low-grade M flare category, it looks like there on the chart. That could be from the active regions over here, which are now well off the western limb. It looks like maybe a little bit of flaring going on here within 3,500 as well. Notice that little feature going on. But it doesn't have much time left before it's out of sight, out of mind off the western limb. So we'll continue to watch the sun and see if anything kicks up or not. All right, let's check out earthquake activity. Anything major going on out here? We do have a little bit of a movement up here in Alaska. A 5.0 coming in here within the last hour. That is just outside of the Denali area, Alaska Range. Been up here once. Beautiful area. Absolutely beautiful. I was up there in the wintertime, and it was still beautiful. I love all the snow and wildlife up there in that time. This earthquake occurring roughly about 100 kilometers deep. Goodness. That is quite the deep earthquake up here. And one of the larger ones I would say we've seen here in a little bit. We haven't really seen too much earthquake activity within this magnitude in a little while up here across the Alaska Range. So that could be an obvious sign here to watch the subduction regions here. Quite a bit of strain pushing up here into the North American plate. Obviously the Pacific plate subducting underneath the North America region. That is a big time subduction zone area. Average slip around 60 mm or so. It gets higher once you head further west along the Aleutian Trench, and that's just an average number for that subduction zone area. And of course the movement earlier this morning as well along the Aleutian Trench. So heightened activity here across the northern areas of the Pacific plate. Into the Pacific Northwest, it looks like a handful of earthquakes here across Mount St. Helens once again. Got about 8 earthquakes showing up here in the last 24 hours. So let's go check out the Mount St. Helens data up here, which is still sitting at a green level. Normal conditions prevailing here at Mount St. Helens. There's some of that earthquake activity occurring on the southern rim here of that volcano. A glance here at the gas monitoring stations. Now this monitors various forms of volcanic gases and just temperatures and whatnot in general. I'm not really seeing any elevated activity across the carbon dioxide, sulfur dioxide, or any other charts. It looks pretty stable. And I think if we were to see this get elevated in terms of potential volcanic eruption, those would obviously go up along with the GPS and inflation and whatnot, which is... let's see if one of these are going to show us a GPS displacement. That kind of looks... That's from 2020. That's pretty old. Oops. Go back here and double check that. That's 2022. So some of these are offline. But we did check this here recently, and it doesn't show any form of vertical displacement. I'm trying to get the seismograph station here to key up. Let me zoom in a little bit here. See what's going on. One of these work. I think it's this one right here. There we go. So there is some of that earthquake activity, and as you can see, there's a handful. The earthquake activity in question is going to be these little spikes here. Those are very localized earthquakes. That's what earthquakes look like on a normal seismograph station here. And there's a handful. I would say definitely more than the 6 or 8 that they're showing there on the graph. So still just kind of an ongoing event here. I mean, it's been like this here for the past couple months, off and on earthquake activity. So obviously magma, it's been probably over 3 months, I think, that we've been seeing this activity kick up. So, and the USGS did put out a little update on that. I don't know when that was. Was it back in October? Yeah, they're kind of talking about how some of this activity could be related to the magma system below being recharged. Magma slowly rises through the lower crust and accumulates in the reservoir about 2.5 to 6 miles below the surface. That's 4 to 10 kilometers. And recharge events can occur when magma enters the upper reservoir and increases stress that lead to earthquakes. So that's what's going on. But no elevated type activity yet in terms of volcanic activity. Obviously, there's magma. underneath this area. So I'll just continue to watch that. Southern California, goodness, what's going on down here? Mecca, 2.7, and a couple other ones in there as well. Now, that is on the North American side of the plate boundary. I don't like seeing earthquake activity out here because that is just on the southern branch, just off the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. That's where, a lot of the localized accumulated stress will tend to show. That means that this area right here is experiencing quite a bit of strain. Obviously, it has been building up strain and stress for quite a while along that plate boundary. But a little bit of swarming going on there now, so keep an eye on that. Definitely makes me a little on the uneasy side when I see activity stirring up out there. Over here in Los Angeles, a couple smaller quakes, including a 2.6 from earlier this morning. The rest of California, a handful of earthquakes across the area. Nothing big going on for now. Yellowstone National Park. Let's see what we got here. Let me bring this up. And we'll take a glance here. Doesn't look like there's a whole lot of activity here today. Past couple days, there's been some very small microquake activity, mainly across the Mary Lake and regions around Purple Mountain. But for the most part, these look pretty quiet for now. In terms of earthquake activity, Texas, where they had a severe weather bust today, it didn't quite play out, which is good news, right? Nobody wants a tornado outbreak in any time of the year. They were calling for a pretty decent chance of tornadoes out here around Houston, but the instability got capped out there, and there was not a whole lot of potential for, well, they had some rain, but as far as those big-time supercells going, just did not play out. 1.6, the latest there, it looks like, in the Texas area. Some spotty movement up here around Oklahoma. This looks like around Cole, Oklahoma. There is quite a few oil fields out here. North Freeney oil field. It's littered with oil fields out there. And most of the oil fields across Texas have been getting hit pretty hard. I shouldn't say most. And I'm not for sure if these are older oil fields out here outside of Pecos, Texas, or why these are consistently getting hit compared to areas, further east. We do see some earthquake activity out here on occasion. Maybe these are newer. I don't know. But these will definitely fill in, no doubt, I believe. So keep an eye on this area. Definitely quite a bit of strain and stress out here amongst the North American plate. It's obvious when you look at all the oil fields here getting hit with earthquakes here recently. These are not swimming pools out there in Texas. These are wastewater disposal ponds associated with the whole process of fracking operations and oil pumping operations out there. Puerto Rico Trench showing a little bit of movement right smack dab on this hazard zone. 4.0 coming in the last hour. 41 kilometers deep. Has been heightened up here across this area recently, so keep an eye on that. I think we've seen a handful of earthquakes out here. Puerto Rico Trench down here, or the Puerto Rico area south, right here in this region, always sees earthquake activity for some reason. I think it's associated with the little trough and subduction zone here, and of course the Puerto Rico Trench up north, kind of putting a squeeze on this area. But this is a region to watch. Puerto Rico Trench down south here as well. Major subduction zone, and it's definitely shown some activity here recently. Nothing big yet, but it is capable of producing some large-scale earthquakes. South America region, a handful. Well, we've got one earthquake, it looks like, here from last night. But there's a little bit, some 2s and 3s kicking up here on the Earthquake 3D globe. Same for the, looks like the Costa Rica area, 4.8 occurring in that region. Let's see, New Zealand got a little bit of earthquake activity south here, South Island region with a couple 3s. And a swarm of activity into the Tonga Trench once again. Look at this. Goodness, that's a lot of deep earthquake activity. The deepest one, 606 kilometers, but the most recent one, a 4.4 here. So getting ready here, I think, to see some big-time uptick across this region. Whenever we see major deep earthquake activity like that, well, get ready for a show, I think. Things are going to be picking up here, I believe, in the near future with earthquake activity in a big fashion. A little bit of movement up around Myanmar and into China. Let's see what's going on with my mouse here. Latest one looks like a 4. Well, that's over in Japan. But there is a little bit of earthquake activity up here. Latest one, 4.6, well off the plate boundary, about 10 kilometers deep or so. There's a pretty deep earthquake here in Myanmar, occurring about 160 kilometers deep. We'll keep an eye on this area. Things are definitely picking up, I feel. One of the latest earthquakes, though, in this region looks like a 4.7 off the east coast here of Japan, 52 kilometers deep into the Japan Trench. Now, the Kuril-Kamchatka, goodness, this area is just waiting to experience something big, I think. It's been a long time since we've seen any large-scale megaquake movement out here on this area of the Pacific Plate. Obviously, the last big one, 9.0, right, back in 2011, the Japan one. I think we all remember that. But this stretch of land up here, the subduction zone, definitely primed for some large-scale activity. The Big Island of Hawaii, a couple earthquakes around Pahala, the latest at 2.0. Let's see what we got for the Kilauea volcano. I've been watching this pretty closely here in terms of inflation without eruption. A lot of inflation occurring down here in this area south of the summit region where the lava lake area is. Looks like, hard to tell. This is the last 2 days, obviously inflation. We're looking at a little bit of deflation event right here, but I'm not for certain this is going to go down compared to the past few events that we've seen here over the last couple months. We've seen a period of inflation here, followed by at least a day or two of deflation, and then a reamping of inflation larger than the previous event. So something big is pushing its way into this area. And again, the level of inflation is at the highest it's been since the 2018 eruption here in this area. So things are they're building, but there's not a whole lot of earthquake activity. And I think we would see that really kick up here in a big fashion before we see a breakthrough at the surface. But I'm leaning more towards, and I keep saying it here, just to the south of the summit area where we're seeing all this earthquake activity. Instead of, the similar eruptions like we've seen confined to this area, which is now much fuller. This is kind of when it was empty here, the lava lake area. It's much, much, much fuller now. All right, real quick glance at the space weather activity once again. Let's go over here to Solar Ham. And again, this is the 30-minute forecast here. He gets this from the Space Weather Prediction Center, and you can go to that site yourself if you want to check out the forecasts. But right now, it just doesn't look like anything major is taking place. I'm just kind of curious if this is just the arrival of the first CME, or maybe the first CME was weaker, and this is just the combination of the 3 CMEs that we were expecting to be strong, and they're maybe just much weaker. I don't know. I guess we're going to find out in the morning, right? We wake up and I missed the show. I don't know if we'd see it down here in Northern California. I mean, I kind of live out here in the country a little bit, but I don't have a completely clear view of the northern horizon, so I don't think it would be worth it unless we get a huge event taking place, and obviously I would stay awake for it. But it just doesn't look like anything's coming in yet. So we'll continue to watch that. Of course, the live stream is up and running. That is showing the 30-minute intervals of the Aurora forecast, which updates by itself there. So hopefully, looks like he has this marked here on this. This is the solar weather data, the real time, but not right now. This is looks like a snapshot of it. CME passage, obviously, but who's to say that maybe this wasn't another CME? I don't know. Obviously, it looks like it is upticked and elevated slightly, but maybe that was the big one. Maybe that was the arrival of the 3 that we were expecting, and that was it. who knows? We'll find out tomorrow. I'm hoping I'm wrong. Hopefully things really stir up out here, but right now it doesn't look like any big show going on. Could be wrong, though. All right, folks, I'm out of here. Have yourself a good night, and stay safe out there. Keep an eye on the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault. I only say that because of that earthquake swarming going on down there. Not a big swarm, but it is right in the area that is just a little on the scary side to see any type of movement. So just keep an eye, Southern California area. Iceland, yeah, we didn't really get a chance to check that yet. Let me go over here and see what we got. Only about 27 earthquakes here in the last 12 hours. Some of it offshore here, some of it north of Grindavik, and really not any change going on. I don't even know if they put out an update here today or not. It wasn't here when I checked this morning. Doesn't look like it's here right now. Hopefully they'll put one out tomorrow, unless it's just, dying off. But right now, no major change going on there across the Iceland area. All right, folks, have a good night. We'll catch you guys back here tomorrow, Friday.